So, David, absolutely delighted to have you on the show. Feel honoured to sit and talk to you. Yeah, really do. And obviously, we have the mutual being footballers in common. So, hopefully, we'll get a little bit of a chance to explain to some of our viewers about your background and how you got into, obviously, football and then ended up in the space you're in now.
Yeah, I'm quite envious of football these days because they play on pitches. Do you remember?
God, I'm still old enough to remember the bogs. Yeah.
God! Yeah, well, do you know when I first started out as a schoolboy, they still had the lace in the football, right? That if you headed it and got the lace, then there's a big thing on your head. And come kind of end of November, the four corners had a bit of grass. It
was unbelievable. I think kids have to go on YouTube now to watch those games.
I know, it's unbelievable.
But then you could, when you were the goalkeeper, you could kick it back to the goalkeeper. You could have a cigarette and before you kicked it back off. The back pass rule wasn't in.
Yeah, it came in when I joined Coventry City at 15 in 1967. That's when they started that sequence of. And at the start, it was much more severe. You had to get rid of it really quick suddenly instead of having time. But the whole game has changed in that sense. I mean, today they're playing the ball out from the back, the goalkeepers. I think too often actually. But in those days, you couldn't play out from the back. The ball's bobbling on the bloody mud, I mean, the guy's got it under control. He's shut down. So it was a completely different game. I mean, you basically got the ball as a goalkeeper, and you kicked it as long as you could, and that was it.
You got 1-0 up. They passed. I've seen lots of videos of the great Liverpool sides. They were 1-0 up, pass it back to the keeper.
Yeah,
take a bit of sting out the cloth. Yeah. The back pass rule. I'm intending to ask you this, and your thoughts on modern football. The back pass rule took out a lot of top keepers, so Peter Shilton, Peter Schmeichel, because all of a sudden, and in the modern game now, the first thing you'd ask about a goalkeeper is, can he play football?
Yeah. Do you know, I grew up in Leicester with Shilton. He played for another school team. I played against him when I was 13. He was 15, and he played outfield for his school, actually. And so I've known Shilton a long time. He was the best. I saw him playing a schoolboy international at Wembley against Scotland, I think it was. And he's the best 15-year-old goalkeeper I've ever seen. And he was the best 40-year-old goalkeeper I've ever seen. But you're absolutely right. With his feet, he was not the best. And I still watch football, and I'm still a goalkeeper connoisseur. And I see goalkeepers who don't have the shot-stopping, cross-catching abilities that many of the others had, but they can play out from the back. And if I'm absolutely honest, I would have been shit at playing out from the back. So I played in the right era, really, but not for very long.
So who in your opinion, then, is the best goalkeeper you've ever seen?
Well, Peter Shilton, but I was blessed because I was born in Leicester, and the goalkeeper for Leicester in the early 60s, before Shilton came in, was Gordon Banks.
Wow!
And one of the things that is kind of funny to me is all these goalkeeping coaches they have today. Every club has a goalkeeping coach. I had to frickin' beg for goalkeeping training. You were playing five-a-sides. Can I have some goalkeeping training? It wasn't even thought of. I remember there was a bloke who used to play for England called Bert Williams. He actually wasn't very tall, funny enough. And he started a goalkeeping school. And he would come to Coventry maybe, once a week or sometimes once a month. And you'd have a bit of goalkeeping. But the goalkeeping training they do now is absolutely extraordinary. And yet you don't see the same. You don't see it in the quality, the ability.
They're like a little unit now that breaks away. They've got their own little unit, the goalkeepers union. They go and siphon off, and then you have to call them over to get them involved in the main session.
Yeah, But in those days, you were just desperate to have some goalkeeping training in the week. You know, what you do is at the end of the training session, when you'd not done any goalkeeping, unless there was some shooting a period, is then you do your own stuff. But you'd have to almost beg for it to happen. I remember there was a guy called Phil Parks at Wolves when I was playing. And he was saying you can go from Monday to Friday and not have any goalkeeping, and now suddenly you have all this, but you don't see it in that goalkeepers are massively better and sometimes worse in the goalkeeping aspect than you had in the past. So Gordon Banks, because there was basically no goalkeeping coaching of any kind, especially when you're growing up as a footballer, as a schoolboy. I went to Filbert Street, and every week, every home game, I would be outside the Filbert Street end at 1:30 when the gates opened. And I would find me place right in the middle of the goal. Because you remember at Leicester at Filbert Street, the goals were very close to the crowd.
I think I'm too young to never played there. It'd been knocked down. It was the King Power by the time
King
I got
Power
there,
was
mate.
it? Oh, showing me freaking age, isn't I?
I do remember Filbert Street, Martin O'Neill as a kid, but I never played there.
Yeah, well,
you
you remember West Ham, the old...
I've played there, the bowling ground.
The bowling ground. I played there as well once. The goals were very close to the crowd.
Yeah.
Well, Filbert Street was like that.
Good old-fashioned stadium.
Yeah,
the way they should be,
so I would stand there and I would, in one half, whichever one it was, I would study Gordon Banks, where he went in positions to relation to the ball and everything. That's how I learned how to play in goal.
Yeah.
And then Chilton came along and Banks went off to Stoke. And then when I played for Coventry, the manager, it was a funny thing because I'd watched Leicester play against Manchester United at Filbert Street as a kid when I was about 14, and it was the most sensational game I've ever seen. I think it was on Match of the Day. It was quite an even game in terms of possession and everything, and Manchester United won. I think it was 5-2. George Best, the fullback went off with twisted blood. Charlton got a couple of phenomenal shot goals, and I think Law played, and Giles played. I remember Johnny Giles, and it was the most extraordinary game you would ever see. And I saw this guy who's the left back for Manchester United called
Johnny Giles or Nobby Styles, you know about? Johnny Giles played for Leeds, did he? Or
he went to Leeds eventually, but he started off at Manchester United.
Was he at Man U, was he? Yeah,
played outright.
Do we want to play it? Like even there, everybody I speak to from that era, David, like there's a lot of, and I say like there's a good mate of mine who was an agent, and his dad was an agent. I say, who's the best you've ever seen? Georgie Best, without hesitation.
Oh, Best, unbelievable. I saw him play quite a few times. He was an extraordinary player, and when you think, I guess to an extent, he would have been helped by the dodgy, muddy pitches because the defenders were, couldn't cope with him. But he was also struggling to keep his feet. But on these pitches, I would love to have seen him play on the way they do now.
Oh, well, especially he can't tackle anymore. He'd have been so well protected.
Did you ever see those that documentary about George Best? It was on a long time ago, but you can get it on the internet. The tackles that fella had to cope with was unbelievable. And the other thing about George Best, and he was kind of the big player of my era, of my youth, and then when I went to
the fifth Beatle, they called him.
Yeah,
they called him the fifth Beatle. He was that big. Yeah,
fifth Beatle. Yeah, it was like he had an upbringing that was very challenging. But when you are someone who plays on the field where they don't know what you're going to do next because you don't really know what you're going to do next. It's all kind of intuitive and in the second, in the moment. And then when they step across the white line, you expect them to be normal. You're not going to have that. He was a totally unpredictable player. You're not going to have a predictable human being. I was described in that fantastic Manchester United team. actually played at Old Trafford in that era in a semi-final of the FA Youth Cup. It was one of the great honours to play at Man United at that time. But I used to call George Best the Ferrari and Bobby Charlton the Rolls Royce. They were completely different players. They're both phenomenal. But Charlton played in an expressive way, yes, but a much more kind of almost establishment way. And so off the pitch, you've got an establishment person basically in Bobby Charlton. And I met Bobby Charlton. I did some things with him at one point just after his career ended, and he was a lovely guy. I found him a lovely guy. But George Best was a phenomenon. He was a genius working on pure intuition. He was responding all the time to what the defender was doing or trying to trick the defender, and it was all intuition. And you expect the guy to walk across the white line to the dressing room and become a normal bloke. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. And, you know, we have to understand the individual. You have to understand their upbringing. You have to understand their experience and all their stuff, their attitude to life, and treat them as individuals and not expect them to be, round pegs in square holes.
Well, they're trying to breed that out. Like George there, obviously mercurial talent, maverick of the game. And the line between genius and madness is obviously often very, very close and can be, you know, depending on where you got out of the bed in the morning, can be. And that's what it looks like, you know, with George to handle that. No footballer in this country had been that famous, that, you know, given that much access to all the vices of life. And it would have been, you know, really, really difficult, I would imagine, with no, I know he had some at Busby trying to keep it online for him, but
I don't think he took the necessarily the correct line with him. The other thing about George was the pressure of expectation. I kind of saw that where Best would play and he'd have a tremendous game, but because he hadn't picked the ball up, gone around about three people and chipped it over the goalkeeper, it was like, oh, George didn't do much today, did he? Well, actually, he did. But the pressure of expectation, because of the genius that he was, you can't just turn genius on, like a tap. It is what it is, and sometimes you do fantastic things. Sometimes you do brilliant things, but not sensational things, and people are disappointed.
Yeah.
So it's that pressure all the time of expectation of doing more than other players do, but all the frickin' time. And I'm sure that was impacted on him.
Yeah, and also when you think of, as we say, in the physicality, you know, people getting jealous of superstars and hanging around with Miss World and everything that George was up to off the pitch, which will have brought a level of kind of resentment from, you know, referees and opposition players. Plus, because of the way the game was then, you get the opportunity to kick 10 bells of shite out of him once the game kicks off.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're asking a mercurial genius-like player to then survive against, you know, potential career-ending tackles every 5 minutes. You look at the game now, kind of Lionel Messi, who I think is the best player of certainly the last generation. He was way more protected by referees and officials than, let's say, even Diego Maradona was, who was a mercurial talent and obviously best in the UK at that time. Will have got nowhere near the protection that is ability and creativity needed.
Yeah, and I think another thing about George, Joey, was a lot of the stuff that happened off the pitch and eventually the drinking. I think if you just psychoanalyzed him, he was trying to escape from something. He's trying to escape from memories, I don't know, but trying to escape from something. And, you know, if you look at humanity in general, most people in some way are trying to escape from something. They might do it with sex, they might do it with drink, they might do it with drugs, but it's escaping the perceived reality of their lives. And I think a lot of that would explain why George Best didn't fulfill in longevity the potential that he had.
Well, it was like the Gascoigne quote when they were going on about Sir Alex Ferguson. If he'd decided for Man United, he would have gone a different way in the crossroads. And he, in an interview, he pointed out. He actually think it was with Black Gary. You want to come across Black Gary? We call him Black Gary. Gary Lineker, because he once claimed that he was racially abused. So we wind him up because he's a bit of a virtue signaller. But I think he done an interview, Gaza, where he said, if I'd have gone to Man United, well, look what happened at Man United with all his stars. Obviously, Giggs and all, like, none of them behaved themselves. So why would I have been any different? Those kind of talents like a Gascoigne, when they become that famous, I think it's really, really... Because as a footballer, as you know, certainly my generation, we had to be almost like monks, drinking, smoking, going out late, would show in performance because the physical demands placed on the game and the level of professionalism, that might have been a bygone era. And Terry McDermott, a good friend of mine.
That was after my era, that's sure.
Well, Terry McDermott, a good friend of mine, and he said when Liverpool were winning all sorts, he said, we'd be out, Monday, Tuesday, tough session, Tuesday where we'd get the bin bags on, we'd be out on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you'd knuckle down, play Saturday, and then the cycle would begin. He said, and that's where our team chemistry and that was forged. We were out and about, jacking the ladder.
Absolutely. I mean, it's about balance. And Gascoigne's a great example of what we're talking about. He was a guy who played on intuition. And I tell you something I've kind of noticed. You get deeper into the esoteric side of this. There is no such thing as time. There is our perception of time, and there's the way we process sequences of events. So Einstein sussed this a long time ago, that time is an illusion. That if, as he said, was the effect of, if you are in the company of a beautiful woman, time goes very fast. If you got your finger in a saucepan of water boiling, it goes very, very slowly. And it's actually not time so much as our relationship to time, because if you think about it, that there is really only the now moment. Everything happens in this now moment, and that's very difficult for people to get their head round when we are constantly faced with apparently the passage of time. But if you ask, okay, where were you when what you now perceive as the past, where were you when that happened? You were in the now. Where will you be when what you perceive as the future becomes reality? You'll be in the now. The future is a projection and the past is a memory. And the reason I raise this in relation to Gascoigne and people like him is their relationship to time was different to other players. So you keep hearing these things, that guy always seems to have more time than anyone else on the ball, with the ball. And you start to realize they're processing their relationship to time is different. So you've got a big, hairy defender, and he'll have a certain perception of time, and won't appear to have the same amount of time on the ball or with the ball or whatever he does as a Gascoigne or a Best, or one of these really great players. And it's to do with their relationship to time and the way they process time.
I totally agree with you on that. When I watch Messi, sometimes I think he's operating in a different shutter speed to the rest of us.
Absolutely he is. And the thing is that when you get into the depth of reality, we are observing people, because the key common theme of people, footballers, whatever, is that they have what we call a physical body. And therefore, at that level, they all appear to be the same. So you look at a football match and there's 22 players playing. But in terms of their consciousness, in the way that they interact with time, the way they interact with reality in general, they're in different dimensions of perceptual consciousness, and therefore some will seem to have lots of time, and some they get the ball and immediately
hot potato.
it's the time's gone. They're shut down, and they're not the same players, and it's to do with the way we interact with reality.
Well, it'd be interesting to learn that skill, because if it was a learned skill, then obviously you could make masses of progress, certainly as a footballer with it. I'm conscious of time. I'm the same. I just time, if I'm talking to somebody, I have no concept of it. And being in the now is very much, I haven't even asked you the opening question yet. And just leading on to what you asked me, we mentioned Black Gary before, Gary Lineker. Yeah. And he's famous, or he got an award, I think, from FIFA last week for not having been given a yellow card or in his whole career, which is an incredible achievement. A little bit more so then, because it was a bit harder to get a yellow card than it is now. But also, there's another legend that I've found out you've got an interesting link to, who was also one of those, I think there's 4 people never to have been booked. You're alleged to have bought a car off him, the legendary John Charles.
Yeah. In my career, I met, it wasn't very long, because I finished at 21 with rheumatoid arthritis. But I met some incredible people. Like I was going on to say earlier, when I watched that Man United game against Leicester, that fantastic game, Best was fantastic. I saw this left back called Noel Cantwell, Irish international, and I noticed him. And a year later, he's my manager at Coventry City, because when I signed for Coventry City, Jimmy Hill was manager. He'd taken them up to the first division, as it was, the Premiership it is now.
We've got a lot to thank him for. He broke the pay structure for our generation.
Yeah,
Jimmy.
Brilliant. I mean, he was much maligned, I think, Jimmy Hill. Because I then went to work with him at the BBC in programmes like Match of the Day and stuff. Noel Cantwell came in because Jimmy Hill, he got him to the first division. And I think he was very canny, Jimmy, and I think he looked at his team and thought, first division, nah.
Some ship.
And he went to be a pundit, which he was from then on. And they brought in Noel Cantwell. And Noel Cantwell was a lovely, lovely guy. He was a fantastic guy. And we had some wonderful times at Coventry in those early years. The Coventry team had more characters. That first 2-3 years in the first division had more characters than I've ever come across in any other team. Morris Setters, he had bow legs. He couldn't catch a pig in a passage, as my mother used to say. He was small. He couldn't run. But he was fricking brilliant. Yeah. I remember watching a Leicester game when he played for Stoke City before he came across to Coventry when I went there. And he was marking Derek Dugan, who's a really big bloke. He was a big star at Leicester at the time. And you thought, hey, Morris Setters, Derek Dugan, it's got to be a laugh, this is. And what Setters would do is, just as they went up for the ball, he did just a slight little nudge, and he's away. And Dugan didn't get a touch that day, which was shocking to us, given the difference in size. But he came to Coventry, and he was such a fricking character. He ended up with Jack Charlton of the Republic of Ireland, didn't he?
Jack done great there, yeah. Big Jack, yeah.
And there was another guy who's probably the greatest character I've ever met in football, Ernie Hunt. Ernie fricking Hunt.
I guarantee what his nickname would be there.
Oh, yeah, no, exactly. But he came from Everton, and he was so fricking funny. And he scored that amazing goal, Willie Carr with the backflip and the volley against Everton, funny enough, top corner. I watched them practicing that all week, and then he did it on the Saturday. It was on Match of the Day.
Is that the free kick that they roll back and he flicks up or something like that?
Willie Carr, I played with many times. He flicked the ball back with it. He put his feet next on the ball and flicked it back, and as it came, and one of the fantastic skills that Ernie Hunt had, because he couldn't run either, he was overweight, and was volleys. He was unbelievable. And he had fantastic
Technique,
ball skill and everything. And he hit it in the top corner. And you know when you find this with authority, like police officers, where something happens and it's different to the norm. So, the officer with his hat on goes, "This can't be right. It's different. There must be a law against it." When it's like I remember a guy was holding up in a royal park. He was holding up a sign that said something like "Be happy" or something, and the park police approached him because this is different. So there's got to be a problem. There's got to be a law against it. So what they did with the backflip Willie Carr and the volley from Ernie Hunt is they banned it. They banned it very soon afterwards. So they could never do it again.
I seen a video doing the rounds the other day of Celtic playing Leeds. I think it must have been 1970. And there was a winger, Celtic's best player, called Jimmy Johnson, Jinky or something like that.
Oh, yeah, I remember him.
He was another one who couldn't catch a pig in an alley.
Yeah.
And again, you look at him now, there's a lot of players now, I think, that if they went through the same... Terry McDermott used to say to me, the best players of any generation, we're given that training and nutrition and advice, would have been the best players whenever they were born. He genuinely believed that they were the best players at their time. And if you put in, all the training that, the young players get now and the money the young players get and the good advice in terms of science, nutrition, whatever, that they'd equally be the best players at this generation.
I'm sure they would. I mean, I think Charlton Best would thrive today. But you mentioned John Charles. Yeah, what a character.
What was the car you bought off him? What was your car?
Yeah, it was, I think it was was it Morris? It was called a Riley. Yeah. So anyway, I bought it off him. And clown cars, like in a circus, where the wheels fall off and then the bonnet falls. That's exactly what frickin' happened.
So he
did me. He did me in cold blood. So... Anyway,
and he never got a yellow card. He should have got a yellow card for that. He was called the Gentle Giant in Italy when he played for Juventus and stuff. And he was a lovely, lovely, lovely guy. He was never cut out to be a manager. What happened is I was told when I was 19 at Coventry that I would never play again. And I could be in a wheelchair in my 30s because of this rheumatoid arthritis, which don't trouble me anymore. Just because they tell you, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. And I knew a guy who was a Coventry director for a long time called John Campkin. He ran a series of travel agents. And he contacted me and he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to continue playing football if I can. And he said, well, I'll do what I can. And he was a friend of John Charles, and who was manager of Hereford United, who were in the Southern League at the time, what we would call the version of the National League now. And they kind of played twice a week and trained, when there was time. And so I went down and I met him. And I always remember when I was doing some training with him, and I was throwing balls at him from the 6-yard box. And he was just inside the box. And he was heading them back like frickin' bullets. And this guy must have been in his 40s by then. Massive, massive, massive man. And but he was never cut out to be a manager. I remember we were playing one night against Worcester City. And Worcester City were the local rivals of Hereford at the time. And... he's standing there at the door, and people are bouncing the ball waiting to go out. And he said, right, lads, he said, we got to win tonight. And then he thought about it for a minute. He said, well, we've not got to win, have we? But it would be nice, wouldn't it? And that was the kind of guy he was, until he sold me the freaking car. Yeah, it was a Riley. I was skint and been sort of skint for most of my early life. And it was a rust bucket. And I ran it for as long as I could, which wasn't very long. And I'm driving home one night from training at Hereford, and I hear bang, 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 bang. And so I pulled over and stopped the car, and I kind of, thumbed a lift up to home. And
the mechanic went out. He said, well, you know what that bang bang was? I said, no, go on. He said, it was your tyre hitting the inside of your mudguard. oh yeah, I should remember this as well. I was driving it, and there was this. Anyone with a health and safety certificate, by the way, just forget this next bit. And I heard a clanging as I was driving. So pulled up the bonnet as best you could because it was rust bucket, and you got the engine, and then you've got the side that the engine part of the engine is connected to, and that had gone like that. Right there, it was a hole. It had come apart. That was what the clanging was, right? So we went to Woolworths, which used to sell like big green, I remember it was, green foam. There was about that thick. Bought this green foam, put it in the hole, taped it in, and it stopped that clanging.
So what do you still hear to tell the tale?
Oh, yeah. And that was the end. That clanging of the tyre on the inside of the mudguard, that was the end of it, I'm afraid.
Yeah, don't trust John Charles if you ever try.
Oh, no, don't buy a car off John Charles, whatever you do.
So for me, how does that change then? Obviously, you've had the news you've got arthritis at a young age as a young player. Must have been, world ending. You've decided you want to go into football, and then next minute it's taken away from you. How do you then transition into becoming who you are today? The David Icke that we all know and love.
Oh, God, that's a hell of a long story. The short version. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a footballer. Because when I was growing up, we lived on a council estate in Leicester. Actually, my brother, Paul, still lives in the same house. And we were absolutely frickin' skint. But you don't know you're skint when you're a kid, do you?
No.
You just get on with it.
Everyone's in the same boat on them council estates, mate.
It's only later that you see other people have these things, and you think, well, maybe I'd like those things. But like you say, everyone in the same boat, so you just get on with it. My childhood was financially deprived, shall we say, but absolutely freaking brilliant, right? But I was a diffident kid. You were born into this environment where everything was kind of scarce, and you got this understanding or this perception that was always going to be that the best things in life are always happening to other people, not to you. And you're not really going to achieve anything. I didn't really think about it much, but I was a diffident kid, and I was. I went to school on the first morning. I went to school, infant school, and I thought, well, sod this. I got to lunchtime. I got sod this. I don't like this. I went home. I said to my mum, look, I don't want to go down the shops like we used to. I don't want to go there. Oh, you got to go to school. Oh my God. And then. The thing that really changed my life really is through infant school and into junior school. The diffident kid, and best things in life happen to other people. And who am I? What am I going to do? Who am I to achieve anything? And then I walk up the steps one day at the school, the junior school, and I saw this sign. It said, put your name down here if you want to trial for the school team. It was the third year team of a junior school. And I thought, as usual, well, no good me putting my name down. I'm not going to get in, am I? Right? That's the way I saw my life at that time. And then just after that, I'm walking home. And this kid's come running after me, and he says, Icke, he said, Mr. Rickard, his name was, wants you in the school trial tomorrow. And what he's been doing, we used to have at the playground at this junior school, we used to play something called uppers and downers, because it was slightly at an incline from goal to goal. Actually, it was a netball pitch, really. And I used to play in goal, always wanted to play in goal. And I used to play in goal in uppers and downers. But someone would come with a football, kick it in the air, and go uppers and downers, and you decided what team you were going to play in. And often it was very uneven. And he'd seen me playing, and I didn't know. So I go to the school trial, and what happened is I had no football boots. So I'm run home. I'm really excited. Oh, they want me in the school trial. Crikey, this doesn't happen to me. And I got home. My father came back from work. I said, I'm in the school trial tomorrow, and I got no boots. And in those days, of course, you didn't have supermarkets open till the dead of frickin' night in 24 hours. Everything shut at 5 o'clock. And so we went down to a place called Green Lane Road in Leicester, looking for anywhere that was open and would get football boots. I mean, what an impossible task. And then we come to this shop, and it's frickin' open. And in the window, I could see it now, were these enormous frickin' football boots. Like, I'm a kid.
Like clown shoes?
These clown shoes. I've also described them as like, the shoes that those divers wear with the big helmets on to keep them underwater,
There's
right?
a few players I played with played in them.
Oh, yeah. And massive toe caps, right? You've got to have massive toe caps. And there were 7 and 6, I think, or something like that. And so we bought these boots, and they're massive. I mean, my feet go nowhere near the end of them, and people were laughing when I went to the trial in these big boots. Of course, they all had the latest. And but it worked out because the teacher was going to decide. There was me and another kid, and he was going to decide which one was in the team, because he wanted me as an outfield player by this time. By who had the best shot, who had the hardest shot. So they got this kid in goal, and it's me and this other fella who had a shot at goal, and he was going to decide. Well, this kid had no frickin' chance, did he? I mean, I've got these big boots with a big frickin' toe cap.
I thought he was going to pick you there because you had the bigger feet. He's gone, you're fucking safe. More, we've got bigger feet.
So I've hit it, toe cap, toe punt shot. It's gone in the goal like an Exocet missile, and I'm in the team. And very soon afterwards, I became a goalkeeper. But what I found was all the way through my life, there have been a series of moments, very synchronistic moments, without which I wouldn't have, first of all, become a footballer, and many other things after that, but a footballer, because if I had not got in that team and the teacher had not said, "Oh, come for the trial," I'd probably never been a footballer.
Well, yeah, that's. I mean, when you look at that sliding doors kind of moments, or little parts of it, there's another one that with Betty Shine. Obviously, you're saying about the arthritis you had.
Yeah,
stops you playing. You end up meeting Betty, who is obviously a healer of some form of fashion. I'm only what I've read about her.
I'll come to that.
And is that to get pain relief and help you with your arthritis?
Well, it kind of was. I'll come around to that in a second. There's just one other thing about the football career, which was pivotal, is that in those days, they have kids now, little kids going for trials with football clubs.
Yeah.
It's insane for me anyway. But in those days, they were first of all looking to about 13, something like that, and they only looked at your they only looked at you if you were playing for your city schoolboys team or your county schoolboys team. And what happened with the diffidence is that once I got in a team, and I scored in my first game.
With the Steelies on?
Yeah, still with them boots on. But we did win 16-0 against a Roman Catholic team called the Newry.
I was going to ask you that. Was your school a religious school, or was it just comprehensive?
Well, it was kind of Church of England, but you had all the biblical stuff in the. You
didn't have to do a communion.
No, none of that. Oh my God, none of that stuff. Anyway, so. By this time, there's a kid playing in the under 14 Leicester team, in the under 15 Leicester team, but he's young enough for the under 14 Leicester team, right? The schoolboys team. And the teacher at this school sent me on a trial, but he said, I'm not going to send you as a goalkeeper, he says, because this guy, Dave Valance, he's in the under 15 team. He's going to be the under 14 team, so you're going to get no chance of getting that. He said, I'm going to send you as an outfield player. So I went to the frickin' trial, and my heart wasn't in it. I played a half hour outfield, shit. And you know, and the teacher says, okay, you lads, you go and, you know, kick a ball around over there, and if we need you again, we'll give you a call, and you walk over. And as I walked over, I thought, I want to be a footballer, because that was the thing. Once I got in the team, I want to be a footballer. I want to be a pro footballer. And my whole life changed. It was like, I can achieve something. And so I had to get in a Leicester schoolboys team to even be seen by the clubs. And there I am kicking a ball around with these three kids, or two kids, three of us there were. And suddenly the teacher in this under 14 team, he shouts over, hey, any of you lads playing goal? I'm off, and I'm heading towards him, because what's happened is there's two goalkeepers, Dave Valance and this other kid, and this other kid's got injured. So they need a goalkeeper. And I went in, I did all right. And then they said, we need a reserve to Dave Valance, he told me, so you will go to the next trial. And honestly, Joey, I played in the next trial game. I don't know who selected the teams, but it was like Manchester City against, a pub team. That it was unbelievable. And
a women's football team.
Yeah, okay. Anybody got a lawyer?
I'll be in jail by the time this goes out anyway.
and so it's like a coconut shy. And you know something? You talk about synchronicity and, you know, things happening. If I'd have dived the wrong way, it would have hit me toe and gone over the bar. I couldn't not stop everything. It was
those games.
Was one of those games. And he said, look, mate, he said, I've got to be honest, he said. You're the best goalkeeper. I'm going to put you in the team. So this Dave Valance is playing for the under 15. I'm playing for the under 14. And within, in a matter of a few weeks, I'm on trial at Arsenal. Right? It's unbelievable, the speed of it.
How quick it can happen.
Yeah. And so I've had these synchronicities in my life, which eventually around 1989, 1990, I looked at it and I thought, what's going on? Because these things keep happening, and they open doors and push you in a direction. It's like walking through a maze, and someone's closing off that channel and showing you that channel, and you're getting out of the maze. You're progressing, but through amazing quote bits of luck. So and strange things happening, which brings me to the Betty Shine thing. What happened is I finished football when I was at Hereford when I was just 21. And through, growing up, I had another great love, and that was journalism. I was always reading newspapers, even though I was a kid.
Was you an avid reader as a kid?
Yeah, I read newspapers.
All right.
I didn't read books. I never read a book from start to finish until I was well into my 20s. Never read any of the books at school. And then when it all kicked off,
your football career
30 years ago, with it, 36 years ago, with what I'm doing now, I became such a vociferous reader. It was unbelievable. I mean, put one book down, finish that, and start another one. It went on for years. But I love journalism. So when my career ended, funnily enough, this guy, John Campkin, comes back in. He's helped me get to Hereford, which then led to, a fantastic period of success, because I played for Hereford in their first year in the league when we came second and got promoted.
Ronnie Radford era, was that
Ronnie Radford? Yeah, I played in the same team as Ronnie Radford. Yeah,
against Newcastle in the FA Cup.
All those. I was there. I was. Funnily enough, I was like 19, and the other goalkeeper, Fred Potter, he was in his 30s. And I was in the team at the start, and then I got injured. And like you know what it's like, if you're a midfield player, there's a number of positions you can play. If you're a goalkeeper, well, as long as the other goalkeeper who gets in the team is doing all right well, you're not going to get in, right? So I missed out on the Hereford game, but the thing about Hereford was people talk about that fantastic win at Hereford, 2-1 against Newcastle, but that was a replay. People forget about the phenomenal performance at Newcastle. I was in the stand that night, and we had a guy who played up front, and he was a real hard worker, and he was always chasing people down, but his second touch was usually a tackle, And
played with a few.
Yeah, but we're about 17 seconds into this game at Newcastle, and the ball comes to him on the right-hand side of the penalty area, and he frickin' hits it like a bullet in the top left-hand corner. The goalkeeper, Ian McFall, had no chance with it. And then McDonald got in and scored a penalty and then scored another goal, I think. So
Malcolm MacDonald,
yeah. And he was a big hero at Newcastle at the time. And it was the old Newcastle ground. The atmosphere was unbelievable, packed. And so we're 2-1 down. And then Colin Addison, the player-manager who replaced John Charles, he cuts into the right-hand side of the penalty area, drops his shoulder, goes to the right, and he hits it, absolute perler into the far corner. Second half, held out 2-2 against Newcastle. This is a Southern League team away from home. It's a phenomenal performance. And the other thing that people forget, I understand why, is that after the Newcastle win, on the Wednesday, we played in the next round, and it was against West Ham. It was against Moore and Peters and Hurst, all these players. And it was a 0-0 draw. We lost in the replay, but we hit the frickin' post with a header like few minutes from the end. We would have gone through against them as well. It was unbelievable. So it was all the time I've had these, like I say, these phenomenal bits of luck or experiences. So I was then faced with no career. And I remember I just bought a house, and the Hereford cancelled my contract when I couldn't play anymore. And I remember at one point I had a mortgage of £66 a month, and in the bank was £33 and no frickin' income. And I just managed to sell the house to the first buyer and managed to get a few £100 profit from it. And then John Campkin came in. John Campkin not only ran these travel agents, he'd also worked on the old News Chronicle. He'd worked on the Daily Mail, and he did actually some football commentary on TV in the 60s. And he called me. He said, "What do you want to do now?" I said, "Well, I want to go into journalism." And he helped me get into journalism, because what they were, saying is, what degrees do you have? And, well, actually, I played for Oxford United on loan for 3 months, and I used to pass the university. That didn't seem to make any difference. And so, but I got a job on something called the Leicester Advertiser, which was a tax write-off for the Leicester Mercury evening paper. And it was just about read by the people that wrote it. And it was an incredible kind of culture shock, because when I joined that paper, we had the 3-day week. You remember the miners' strike and Ted Heath and all that stuff? Well, that was all going on.
There's lots of accusations about Ted Heath, isn't there?
Yeah. Don't start me. And so there was the 3-day week, and it was like you can't use electricity and stuff like that. So
are you doing sports journalism here, or are you doing just regular
no, this is news journalism.
Yeah.
And so I remember going to a parish council meeting in some little village in Leicestershire during the 3-day week and all the restrictions. And instead of using the main parish hall, which was run down enough, we all sat round the kitchen stove with a door open and trying to get some heat from the stove while they talked about local street lamps, right? And I'm like weeks away from running into the goal at Hereford, David Icke, and now I'm thinking this is not Woodward and Bernstein, is it? This is not Watergate. This is not what I thought journalism was. But again, synchronistically, you went through the ranks pretty quickly to eventually to television, and I got into the sports department because what I did when my football career ended and I decided I wanted to go into journalism, I had one ambition. I'm going to front Grandstand.
Yeah, well, for my era of people, I can remember the end of Grandstand coming to the end.
Yeah.
But for the younger generation watching this was a flagship programme, big sports programme on the BBC. It was prime time.
It was about 5 hours during the Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
Was fronted by people like David Coleman and Frank Boff, who were greats of sports
Sorry,
broadcasting.
David, just for my audience, it would be like Soccer Saturday used to be, but this encompassed all the sport that was going on in the UK, and they'd have people would come in from the games, and it was. I remember watching it with my granddad as a kid. It was brilliant to watch because it wasn't just one sport that dominated it.
Yeah, and what the funny thing was when I joined the BBC Sports Department. I was working with the absolute greats, historic greats of football and sports broadcasting in general. When I was a kid and Grandstand started, it started in the 50s, as I recall. It was fronted up by David Coleman. I'm sitting at home watching Grandstand. And then I eventually get into the BBC Sports Department in 1982, and Coleman's still fronting it, Boff's fronting it, and you had Ron Pickering, who was a fantastic athletics commentator. You had Peter O'Sullivan.
There's a guy called Ronnie Pickering who's done a video from Hull, so don't confuse the two. It's not the fella who was offering people out in Hull. This is a sports broadcaster.
Right. I don't know him.
Yeah, the kids will be aware of him.
You had Peter O'Sullivan, who was the doyen of racing commentary, and you also had John Motson. Now, when we were having the pre-match meal before the Hereford victory over Newcastle United, John Motson comes in. He's just come into broadcasting with the BBC, and we had a chat, and I talked about my arthritis and what have you, and I said I said to him, well, I really want to go into journalism if I can't play football. And he said, I'll send you some books. You never did, John, did you? But he said, I'll send you some books. And then again, just with Jimmy Hill, Jimmy Hill, who was my manager when I started at Coventry, who was fronting up Match of the Day when I joined the BBC Sports Department, there was John Motson doing the commentary. He's a big commentator by then. And all these greats were there. And it went well for a while. And I eventually became a presenter on the snooker, which was then massive, absolutely colossal. But I became more and more concerned about the environment, not global warming, by the way, but the environment in general, what we were doing to it. And I was seeing places I knew as a kid, or beautiful places being destroyed and everything. And I got involved with the Green Party for a short time. And again, the synchronicity of my life, Joey, was unbelievable. I was on the Isle of Wight, and I contacted the National Green Party. I said, do you have a party on the Isle of Wight? Do you have any group on the Isle of Wight? They said, no. Why didn't you start one, right? So I thought, all right. So I started one, a few public meetings and get some interest. And I've just joined the bloody party. I've just started an Isle of Wight the branch of it, and then we get this letter from the regional Green Party based in Winchester, saying, "Welcome to the regional group. We've got a meeting in Winchester on about 2 weeks ahead." And we invite you to send representatives. So I'll go along, and they're sitting around, contemplating their navels, And at the end of the meeting, the chairperson says, "Well, our representative on National Party Council is standing down today. We'll take proposals for someone to replace them. Have we got any volunteers?" No one put their hand up. I said, well, we've got to have somebody. I said, "I'll do it," right? So they had a vote. I'm the only candidate. 2 people voted against me. And I said, "Well, what does that mean now? What does being on the National Party Council mean?" They said, "Oh, well, you have to attend National Party Council meetings." Okay, well, the next one was a place in a building near Regent's Park in London. So I turn up, not knowing anything about it. I just joined the frickin' party. And they're naval contemplating at higher level during the morning. And then at the end of the morning, the guy says, "We need some speakers for the party in the next year." He said, "We will take nominations and we'll have a vote this afternoon." So I'm sitting there eating me lunch, and a guy comes up to me. He says, "You're on telly, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you'd be confident in front of the cameras, wouldn't you?" I said, "Well, I suppose I would, yeah." He said, "Well, if you put yourself forward as a national speaker, I'll second you." By 5 o'clock, I'm a national spokesman for the British frickin' Green Party, right? And again, synchronicity. One man and a dog used to turn up to the Green Party meetings. I mean, the vote was like virtually undefinable. But then in the months that followed, the environment became more and more of an issue in the country, and there were lots of documentaries about environmental destruction, which kind of got people kind of interested in it. And then we had the European elections, 1989, I think it was, and still in the first year that I'm in the Green Party spokesman. And that doesn't mean anything because no one talks to you. And we got 2 million votes in this. It was like a protest vote, but it was 2 million votes. And suddenly I'm on the news and everything as a national spokesman for the Green Party. And it was like, that was the point, Joey, where I said, look, this don't make any sense. These things keep happening. How do you go from joining a bloody party to being a national spokesman in weeks? It's ridiculous. But there was the funny thing, this leads up to the Betty Shine thing. During that year, 1989, something very strange started to happen to me. So if I was in a room alone...
How old are you in 89 here?
89. Well, I was born in 1952, so work that out.
So you've retired through injury. You've gone into journalism. Yeah. You've gone obviously your BBC, and now are you given up on that?
No, I'm still with the BBC. I'm still with the BBC, but I'm a
and now you've took the Green Party.
I'm a national spokesman for the Green Party, and the BBC eventually fired me under pressure from other political parties saying Ian Rush has scored a hat-trick today.
They don't do pressure, do they?
No.
Because political reasons.
No,
I mean... Question Time interview last night with the guy with the earpiece in? The immigrant. It's nuts what the BBC are doing at the minute. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, don't talk to me about the BBC. I remember there was a Director General of the BBC called Alistair Milne. He was the last decent Director General. He cared about journalism, and I liked him. And Thatcher came in. She put a bloke called Marmaduke Hussey, a Tory MP guy, as a chairman of the governors, etc. And they got rid of Alistair Milne. And
isn't the BBC fair and impartial?
yeah, that'll be the day. And they since then it's just become a completely establishment operation. It was before, but Alistair Milne was different. He did care about proper journalism.
Well, let me just pause you on that, because we'll get to the politics side of it. I really want to get into that with you and the Betty Shine bit. Yeah. But there's a really good mate of mine who's a massive fan of yours, and he's read lots of your books, and he compares you to George Orwell. He says he's like Orwell. It's like he's trying to get here this afternoon to meet you. He's like, you're one of his heroes. And I said to him, if you could ask David any question, what would you ask him? And he said, pretty much what you alluded on earlier. He said, when you got into sports journalism, obviously you had two greats to look up to: Peter Allis, Ted Lowe, Bill McLaren.
All you
mentioned
those people.
David Coleman.
Yeah.
You had Murray Walker, Brian
Unbelievable
Moore,
people.
Peter O'Sullivan, Harry Carpenter, Barry Davis. You mentioned John Motson.
Yeah.
And he said, what does David think of today's, obviously, hosting and commentary? He said if he could ask you any question, that's what he'd ask you. So I'll have to squeeze it in there.
I think they're not the characters that used to be. There are some, but these were one-offs. These were people who were greats of their profession. I don't see many greats around sports journalism or broadcasting now. One of the things that has basically molded it is political bloody correctness and wokeism, where I guess people are watching every they're watching every syllable, going through the mental gymnastics before they say anything, thinking, if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to be in trouble. I remember, when I said I was on loan, I was for 3 months at Oxford United, and Coventry wanted me to have more experience.
Was Robert Maxwell involved there when you were at Oxford?
No, I didn't meet him though, because I did a feature on Oxford United when he was the owner. And I met him in his office then at the Mirror newspapers, one of the most grotesquely horrible people I've ever met in my life. I felt like I needed a shower when I left. I played for Oxford United, and the skipper of the team was Ron Atkinson. And he was club captain, and he played in midfield, and basically stayed within the centre circle, never really moved much because he was a big lad, was Ron, and he would play passes from the centre of midfield. And then I met him again when he was manager, I think, of Cambridge United one time, I think it was, and then he went on to manage Manchester United, and then when I got into television, we were doing like World Cups, like in Spain. He would be with the ITV.
82?
He would be with the Spanish the ITV group broadcast, and we all stayed in the same hotel. So it was, and what shocked me was, and he was a great kind of co-commentator. He had these. He had these sayings, which he used. He was using Oxford United, like early doors and things like that, And then he got caught on a mic that shouldn't have been live, saying things that really he shouldn't have said. But I tell you about Ron Atkinson. No way was he a racist. Mm. I mean, when he was manager of West Bromwich Albion, he had the 3 degrees, didn't he?
Laurie Cunningham, Cyril Regis. Can't remember the other one.
The right back played for England.
I can see him, but I can't think of the name.
But
West Brom 3 degrees. Just get it on. That'll be good for us. Just to get the third name.
So he was never a racist.
Well, Carl Palmer came out and defended him really well. Who'd managed Sheffield. Brendan Batson. Who ended up being the PFA. He was a PFA rep, wasn't he?
That's right.
Guy.
Brendan Batson, yeah. But was he the first black player to play for England? Maybe not.
No, Viv Anderson was the first one.
Yeah, Viv
first,
Anderson. Yeah,
black player.
But Brendan Batson was one of the 3 degrees, and he was a really good player.
Well, Laurie Cunningham went on to play for Real Madrid and was revolutionary on the continent there.
Yeah. So the last thing was that Ron Atkinson was a racist, but by now the political correctness is starting to come in, and I remember, the wokers turned on him, and he had no chance.
He had the same with Andy Gray and Richard Keys when they were hot mic'd, and from what I'm told, there was people in that room who were aware that it was on, and that was a hatchet job. Maybe somebody wanted to get rid of Ron, and obviously, they've kept some.
Yeah, but
same with Andy and Richard.
For whatever with Ron, his whole life, his whole career, and his income was basically destroyed, and he was like marginalised. And oh no, you can't talk about Ron Atkinson. You can't have Ron Atkinson on.
But what he said was wrong. Do you mean?
Absolutely.
But in his defence, you go, okay, he said something that's stupid, clearly, that he shouldn't have said.
Yeah.
Didn't know it was being recorded. But also, if you look at his actions over his life, the amount of players who've played for him of colour who've got nothing but great things to say about him.
Got nothing in the bank.
One mistake and that's the end of him.
Wokeism gives you nothing in the bank. It doesn't matter what you've said up to that point, that you've said something that is, shall we say, inappropriate, to use wokeism language. It's all forgotten. It's only that, and so you have to be ostracised and what have you. And I felt so sorry for Ron Atkinson because I liked him. He was. He was good at his job, and I tell you the thing about Ron Atkinson and what he said about, it was a Chelsea player, wasn't it? Away at Marseille or something? Or
they were playing. I can remember it was like they just left it on in the studio, and he was criticising someone, saying he was a lazy X, Y, Z or whatever. Yeah,
you use language you wouldn't normally use. But Ron was an absolute football fanatic. His entire DNA was football, and he would have seen someone, in his opinion, not trying, not giving everything, and he would have been furious, and that would have led to him saying things he obviously regrets. But to destroy the guy for that was very, very sad.
Well, that's the thing with you. You've obviously been at this for 35 plus years in terms of giving your opinion, very strong opinions, standing behind that. You've been mocked, cancelled, banned, and yet you're still here going strong. What is it that keeps you going?
Well, I'm banned from 30 European countries and Australia currently, and probably many more if I try to get in. So I must be saying something right. What drives me on is the more you become aware of what the agenda is for the world, and the more that agenda becomes bloody obvious, complete AI control, and a fusion between humans and AI, so AI becomes the human mind, human thoughts, human emotional reactions. And you look at the kids, and you look at the grandkids, and you look at the adults, because this is in our time that this is happening. But you look at the kids.
The really Gareth's a very impressive man.
Exactly, and you look at the kids and the grandkids, and not just your own but others, and you think, what the frickin' world are they going to live in of total control? And of course, it drives you on. Ever since the top of my head blew off in 1990 and 91. I was saying today, every day I'm trying to understand more about what's happening and how it's happening and why it's happening. It's a complete, people talk about you go to work and then you have your off time and all that stuff. Well, the way I see reality, the way I see humans in terms of consciousness, the human body is a vehicle for consciousness to experience this reality, that's all. I see my time here, absolutely since 1990, as going to work, right? And when I leave this mortal coil, I will then return to wherever I've come from. But this is a job, and it's a 24-hour job for me. And so I'm driven to, every day is about learning more, understanding more, communicating more. So it's not something that is an add-on to my life. It is my life in totality. And so it's not something that I'm messing about with. It's something that I'm going for 1,000%. And as a result of that, you don't really need to be driven to see the consequences for especially younger people of what's happening and where it's planned to go.
It's interesting that you talk about being in school and knowing you didn't want to be there. I had a problem early on in school. If the teachers said anything to me I didn't agree with, I just opened the door and run home. I was like, I don't want to be here. I'm told I'm very headstrong as a young person. That's kind of it's where I am as an adult, I suppose. So I was laughing when you said that earlier. Now, I would imagine to take yourself and go, I'm not listening to authority, you've got to be relatively confident. It was surprising for me to hear you say that, you were kind of a glass is half empty kind of young player with the team selection in the school. And then obviously, there's a kind of awakening you spoke about, in becoming a player and getting selected. And all of a sudden you start to realise that, you are the master of your own destiny in that regard.
You can achieve things.
About your head blowing off, and I'll get to that with you. But I've got here. Do you remember a moment where you kind of realised, that you weren't ordinary? Because when you're talking to me, as you were talking before, I'm thinking of the Arthur Schopenhauer argument that I first ran into of free will and determinism. It sounds very much like you're saying destiny's kind of these little sliding doors moments.
Yeah, and also that guy is responsible for a quote, as I remember, which says basically, and certainly sums up my life, which is basically summarizing: don't confuse what's possible with what you believe is possible, and that's what that is one of the foundations of human control, because the foundation of human control is control of perception, because from perception comes behavior. Once they got your perception, they got your behavior, they've got you. You saw that during COVID. Make them believe there's a deadly virus, and they'll respond in that, they'll behave in the way that relates to their belief in the deadly virus. And so if you can squeeze people's sense of the possible, then you got them, because you got them in a mind prison. And when someone like me comes along and starts talking about these far out things, they're not really far out. They're just far out from the sense of the possible. And this is what they're doing, and this is how they're doing it. That limited sense of the possible goes, you're freaking mad, mate. That's not possible. Don't be ridiculous. Everyone knows that. No, everyone believes that because everyone's told that. It's not the same thing.
But it's the Steve Jobs thing of those crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who actually do it. That's what he said. You have to think outside the box, otherwise you just end up the same as everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. And, the way the few control the many is so freaking simple in its basic construct, its basic structure. Because one of the things you get, and I've had it now since I started on this journey in 1990, where people say, a few can't control the world, it's not possible. The sad thing, Joey, is it's freaking quite straightforward once certain things are in place. Number one, you are the few. We're supposed to have 8 billion people in the world, and the number of people that are driving the direction of the world globally, not just nationally, is a tiny fraction, a smear of the 8 billion. Not possible. Oh, it is. Because what you do is you have to break up your target population into belief systems, religious belief systems, political belief systems, and those belief systems have to be rigid and unquestioning. So I've said many times, this global cult, as I call it, that's driving the direction of society behind the presidents and the prime ministers and all these people.
So is this stuff that I'd call it the establishment in the UK? Some people call it the deep state in America.
Yeah, but the
Vatican might be a thing.
You look at we're very much involved. If you look in Britain, there's about 70 million people, I think. The number of people that are dictating what happens in Britain is frickin' tiny compared with the number of people who are being affected by those decisions. The tail's not wagging the dog. The tail's wagging the frickin' elephant. And the other interesting thing is that if you look back through history, it's always been like this. The few have always controlled the many, and it's always been the same technique. What you do is you want people, I've said this so many times, this global cult doesn't care what you believe, so long as you believe it rigidly and without question. So they want you to have a belief system, and they want people to have different belief systems that are just as rigid and just as unquestioning. So once you have a rigid belief system, say you believe in Christianity or you believe in Islam or Hinduism or whatever, there is a story, there is a way of seeing life in the world and, quote, God, and it's within certain parameters. And I describe these parameters as prisons of the mind. And beyond this limit, because if you go beyond it, you're a blasphemer, you're not a Christian anymore, you're not a Muslim anymore, you can't say that and be a Muslim. Yeah. So you have these limits. Beyond it is infinity, an infinity of possibility, an infinity of potential, an infinity of insight, knowing, understanding, waiting to be tapped into. But you're not going there. Because if I go there, I'm not a Christian anymore. If I go there, I'm not a Muslim anymore. And people have this kind of desire to be part of a group. I've never had it. I don't understand it. But people do. So you get these belief systems, rigid, unquestioning. There's no problem in saying, well, at this point, this is how I see it. But you got your spikes on, you've got your trainers on, and you're fluid, and in the light of new evidence, you're willing to go with it and say, oh, well, maybe I didn't get it quite right there. I know more now, right? But no, unquestioning rigid belief systems don't do that. They are self-protective. They defend themselves. So once you've got these different belief systems, you then play them off against each other. So the target population is not only limited in what it will explore as a possibility, it's also now these different senses of limitation are at war with each other, fighting for supremacy, fighting for dominance. And while they're all fighting each other and seeking to dominate each other, etc., and it's the same with the left and the right in politics, they don't look up and see the same hands are holding the strings attached to all of them. And this is how the few control the many. You get them to believe rigid, unquestioning, limited belief systems.
That's the problem.
Where they won't go any outside of it. And then you set them off again at war with each other. Yeah.
And then what this is the thing, what is the solution? So why are they doing it? What's the reason they're doing this to us?
What I did was in the 1990s, I came up with this phrase, problem, reaction, solution, where you create a problem. It could be a government collapse, it could be a war, it could be a famine, whatever. You create the problem, and you want the public to react to the problem, like 9/11, wonderful, wonderful example. You want them to react to the problem by saying something must be done. You want them furious, you want them angry, you want them in fear. Do something. And then those who created the problem covertly, like 9/11, they then offer the solutions to the problems they've created. And that will allow you to transform society in ways that without the manufactured problem, you would never be able to do. because the public wouldn't have it.
Well, it seems like the news and the information that we're now getting drip-fed slowly over the COVID and the pandemic is pointing towards a problem reaction solution.
Oh, COVID was a classic. See, there's another aspect of problem reaction solution that I call no problem reaction solution, because we're back to perception. You don't necessarily need a real problem. You need the perception of the problem. And if you want to transform the world globally, you need global problems or the perception of them so you can offer global solutions. So, for instance, human-caused climate change. It's a joke. It's ridiculous. It's scientifically insane. But if you get people to believe it, then they will accept the transformation of society to save the world from human-caused climate change.
I'm just laughing because I'm thinking we've put one of our greatest minds on that project, haven't we? In Ed Miliband, one of the fucking, along with David Lammy and Rachel Reeves. Some of the Einsteinian type characters that we currently have in our country. We've given these big tasks to: one to run the budget, one to run the foreign correspondence and deal with big government, and obviously Miliband to deal with the energy sector.
Is there life on Ed Miliband? I see no frickin' elements.
Well, you could put that to pretty much any politician.
Oh, of course
now,
you can. Yeah,
any politician.
Yeah, David Lammy. If he had a brain cell, it would die of loneliness, wouldn't it? Oh, really? I mean, unbelievable. He was Foreign Secretary before he became Justice Secretary. Now he's trying to destroy juries and stuff.
Yeah, crazy.
As part of the
so
whole
this is the
control
thing, David.
system.
Who are these people that sit above it? Who are these people that benefit from, making the rest of us, the plebs, pretty much the peasants, just take each other on race, on gender, on all the nonsense, this woke nonsense that we're currently dealing with?
Well, it's a very long story, and it kind of there's a sequence of my life which takes us there. I was saying earlier that well, first of all, before I say that, my approach has always been to know that whatever I think I know, there's always more to know. Because when you think you've got it, you're just confirming you haven't. Because one of the things that I say every child should be told at the first moment they can grasp it is that when you look through your eyes, you're not seeing everything in the space you're looking at. You're actually seeing a tiny, tiny band of frequency called visible light, and that's all we can see. And in this same space that we're sitting in is infinite reality. It's infinity. But this, what I call biological computer, this human body, is only decoding a tiny wavelength of it. And it's the same principle, creation as we experience it, it's the same principle as the old analog radio and television stations. They're all sharing the same space, but because they're on different wavelengths, unless they're very close on the dial, they're not interfering with each other. So if you get a radio and you put it to radio 1, you hear radio 1. And then you move it to radio 2, and you hear radio 2. But radio 1 hasn't ceased to broadcast. It's just that you're now tuned to another frequency. And this wavelength we call visible light is all we can see. So from that perspective, well, first of all, it answers so many mysteries, which I'm sure we'll get to. But from that perspective, how can you possibly say, I got it? Oh, it's ridiculous.
I think the more intelligent you become and the more read you become and the more good people you speak to, the more you realise how little you know.
Yeah.
That's a sign of intelligence.
Do you know there's a great quote which is attributed to the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates, which basically sums up the way I work. He said, "To know is to know you know nothing. That is the foundation, basically, of true knowledge. Wisdom is knowing how little you know, because that what that does when you know that whatever you think you know, there's always more to know, you're constantly going deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole. And it takes you into areas that from the perception of normal, program normal, is far out. And what is he saying? He's mad. But all you're doing is following the evidence deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole. So this sequence in my life started with in the early part of 1989. Whenever I was in a room alone, it was like I wasn't alone. I'm still in television at this time, and I'm a national spokesman for the Green Party. And I'd never experienced anything like this before, but I just felt there was a presence. And this went on through that year of 1989 into 1990. And it got more and more tangible and more blatantly obvious to me. And of course, I'm new to this. What's going on? So,
how old are you here at this point?
Well, this is
30s.
This is 1990, and I was born in 1952. So you're
35, 36, or something like that.
That kind of era.
Yeah, so you're going from that kind of younger, masculine energy into a more mature energy. There's a kind of change. Some people would call it kind of that midlife point. I'm not saying midlife crisis, but like that kind of point where you realise that you're going into a different space in your life.
Yeah, you go into a different space, but you also, if you observe the world, you see it doesn't make any sense. Why is this such a shithole for so many people? I mean, I've travelled widely till I started in band, and I've been to maybe 60 odd countries in my life, and the vast majority of people in the world, in Africa, South America, Central America, Asia, whatever, they're not having a good time. They're trying to survive another day, and why is this world so shit? Why is the power of finance held by so few hands? Why is the world as it is? So you're starting to question things. But what happened eventually is I was working for the BBC, and I went back to a hotel called the Kensington Hilton Hotel, just down from Shepherd's Bush, where the BBC is.
It's not anymore.
Eh?
It's moved now. That's a fancy night spot now. It's moved, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah, it used to be, because I was QPR, so I played for QPR for a
bit.
bit.
Right.
So
of course you
I
did.
remember all that. There's a Westfield there now.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a Soho House.
Well, there you go. But it was the Kensington Hilton.
Well, I remember going there for Jules Holland years ago to that Shepherd's Bush.
Oh, right. Okay. And so anyway, I go back, and I'm sitting in this hotel room, and I'm sitting on the bed, no one else in the room. And this presence was so freaking tangible, you could almost touch it. And I remember saying out into the room, look, if there's something there, would you please contact me, because you're driving me up the freaking wall, right? So a few days later, Gareth, I mean, you've interviewed Gareth. You see, he's a big strapping bloke. He was a little boy then. And we're on the Isle of Wight in Ryde, and on the seafront where the railway station is, there was a Greasy Joe cafe. We were going to go in there. Some railway worker came up to me and started asking me about, I think it was an FA Cup semi-final that week involving Southampton. So he wanted to talk about that. And so we were chatting. And then I realised that Gareth wasn't there anymore. But I knew where he would be. There's a newsagent shop on that station. And I knew he'd be in there looking at the steam train books, because, you know, we like steam train books. My other son, Jamie, loves steam train books, steam trains as well. So I go into the entrance to the door. It's a bit different now, the entrance, but pretty much the same. And I stood there and I said, come on, Gaz, because the Greasy Joe Cafe was packed. I said, come on, Gaz, we'll go up in the town and get some lunch. And at that point, the atmosphere changed around me. I now know that it was an electromagnetic field that changed, but the atmosphere changed around me. And what I felt was like magnets pulling my feet to the ground, you know. And it was all very, very strange. And then I heard it wasn't a voice, it was a thought form that went through my head. It wasn't generated by me. And it said, go and look at the books on the far side. So I'm standing there and I'm thinking, what the frickin' hell is happening? And I knew that newsagent shop. There were Mills and Boon and Barbara Cartland novels for the people in the deck chairs on the beach. And it was like perfectly formed English roses and, et cetera, romantic novels. So I'm bewildered about, why am I going over there? Because there was only a few books it sold. But I walked towards it in kind of a daze. What the fuck is happening? And in the middle of these Mills and Boon and Barbara Cartland was this one book which had a woman's face on the front. It was called Mind to Mind. And I was attracted to it because it was different to the others. And I picked it up and I turned it over and I read the blurb. And it was about a professional psychic, Betty Shine, who lived near Brighton. And it was basically her biography, and she was talking about her life as a professional psychic. But she also did the hands-on healing. And
Bill Eileen Drury type. I'm not putting it in the same category as that, but like she was known for like Reiki or healing
that
with
stuff.
hands kind of thing.
She did that. And so I read the book in 24 hours, and I contacted her. And because when I was reading the blurb in the newsagent shop, I thought, I wonder if this woman would pick up what the hell's been happening to me in the last 24 hours, last year. So I read it in 24 hours and went to see her. And I saw her twice. And what I told her was, look, I've got this arthritis. Maybe your hands-on healing will help. And yeah, it was kind of true. I mean, if it does, it does. But my real reason was, will she pick up what's happening to me? Because I didn't want to give her any indication whatsoever of what was happening to me. And we had a couple of, hands-on sessions and all that stuff. And then went the third time. And she's doing the hands-on healing next to me left knee. I was on like a medical type bench in her front room, actually, near Brighton. And I felt like a spider's web on my face. Very tangible. I now know that was an electromagnetic field, but it's the kind of when you're in a football crowd and it's very excited, you feel the hairs on your neck you kind of go up. This is all electromagnetic field generated by the emotion of the crowd. So I felt this, but the thing that hit me was I'd read in her book that sometimes when other dimensions or entities are trying to contact you, you sometimes feel like a spider's web on your face. So I didn't say a word to Betty Shine. And
good job it was Betty and not Clinton Baptiste. I mean, the thing is, for the five senses we've all got, and I want to get like, we also know, sense, sight, but that most of us accept as common senses. When you meet autistic people or animals where they can sense there's going to be rain or what, we also know that there's other animals and other people with completely different experiences than ours. We were talking about Lionel Messi before, seeing stuff at a slower speed. So I'm totally on board for, people being able to tap into something, sometimes, intuition. People argue we've got seven senses, not five. Yeah, well, we've forgotten a couple of them.
Yeah, we've got infinite senses. That's
infinite.
That's the sad thing. The thing is that if you have a visual, or you've got the five senses, and basically they are the senses that we perceive as reality. But some people can go further into the field. They can go further into the field in terms of audibility.
It's like psychics
and sometimes
palm readers and all that, yeah.
You go further into the field, and therefore they're accessing information that is not available to the usual five senses.
But I'm saying, when you first meet Betty, or that you've been, because it seems to me, I went into the philosophy lecture deterministic. I was like, no, every decision you make shapes you. And I walked out of the Schopenhauer lecture believing in free will. You're somebody who's clearly, something's guiding you here. When you met her, was you skeptical, or was you trying to keep a lid on this?
Well, the thing is, that's a great question. I went in kind of a neutral state. I'd never been to a psychic before, but this this presence had been with me so constantly for the last year. I wanted to see if she would pick it up. And we had a chat in the first two meetings, which made a lot of sense about reality and things beyond the senses. But then this thing happened where she's doing my left knee, and I felt the spider's web on my face. I said nothing to her. My only thought was, shit, this is what I read in her book. Because it was really, you could really feel it. Funny enough, I haven't felt it pretty much ever since, but I felt it that day. And suddenly, I never said a word, about 10, 15 seconds later, she launches her head back and she said, my God, this is powerful. I've got to close my eyes for this one. And take into account that I'm presenting the snooker at the time and I'm presenting sports programs. I'm just about to get on a train after I meet her and go to present a sports program.
So you haven't joined the Green Party at this point?
Yeah, I was in the Green Party as well at this point. This was the kind of 1990 it was. It was in that same period. And she starts to tell me that she sees a figure in her mind, which is like a projection. And she said, I'm being told to tell you things. You're going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets. Basically, there's a shadow across the world that needs to be lifted. There's and people need to basically appreciate that the world is not like they believe it is. One man cannot change the world, but one man can communicate the message that can change the world was another line. And that they were going to lead me to knowledge, and at other times knowledge would be put into my mind and I'd think, where did that come from? Okay, how has that happened in the last 36 years? And I went the fourth time, and some other things happened. And then that was it. I never went again. And suddenly my life transformed. Very soon after that was when I got the letter from the BBC, or actually it was a meeting with a BBC as well, where they said, we're not renewing your contract.
Do you know the reason and why? Did they give you a reason for that?
Well, they gave me a pathetic reason, which is we're going in another direction. But the real reason was pressure from politicians to not have a Green Party guy presenting the sport, bizarrely. But by this time, Joey, I'd had enough. I said earlier that I wanted to front grandstand, and I remember the first time I fronted grandstand was the Sunday grandstand then as well. I was driving into the studio, and there was tears coming down my face, not because I was presenting a sports program, sports program, but because I was about to achieve what I'd set out to achieve. One of the worst moments when my football career ended. But once I'd achieved it, my desire to go on doing it just basically waned dramatically, and I was going in another direction. And but this meeting with Betty Shine was the start of incredible synchronicity. So
would you say that's the first time you realise I'm not ordinary? There's something not ordinary here.
Well, I think
you have a higher purpose.
Yeah. Well, if you go back to when I joined the Green Party and became a national spokesman in a matter of weeks, that was when I look back at my life. I look back at the bits of luck and the one door closing but another immediately opening, and I thought, what's going on? There's something not right here. I mean, I'm a determined bloke, and I do have things I want to do, and I pursue them, but that doesn't explain.
I think that happens to. I can think back, certainly for me, and maybe I'm only talking about my own experience, but I can think back to loads of moments going, if that had gone that way or that had gone that way.
Yeah.
And again, from someone who was quite deterministic and still am in many regards, quite. But then I have to accept that there is this element of free will and this, this power, something bigger than us, something guiding us. I don't know what it is. People have all many different names for it, but for me, it's just a power. There's some kind of power in the universe. I don't know, that's bigger than us.
Yeah, well, I think it's beyond the universe. I think we might get we might get into what the universe actually is, but yeah. So, and this was part of this sequence. So, what happened after Betty Shine is, first of all, the BBC got rid of me, and that set me free because I've always lived way below my income because you know. I'd rather wake up in the morning and think, you know, I'd like to go to India.
Most goalkeepers are tight bastards.
You go to India, right? and rather than having a mortgage and think, well, I can't because I've got this big, massive mortgage and this, you know, this big bloody house and all that stuff. So I had a bit of money. It weren't a lot, funnily enough, but I had a bit of money so that I could not work for a little bit and pursue this because. You know, on one level, what you were being told was basically really out there. I mean, are you joking, lady? I present the snooker. I'm going to go out on the world stage and reveal great secrets. What frickin' secrets? But on another level, a deeper level, it was like, you got to go with this, go with this, go with this, go with this. So I did. And my life became this synchronicity sequences of walking into people, personal experience, documents, books that were all. It was like some unseen force were handing me puzzle pieces, like you putting a jigsaw puzzle together, and they were handing me puzzle pieces, basically pretty much in an order where you kind of could see where they went, and it went in a series of stages, but each stage didn't stop when another stage came in. It all continued, which is why, you know, I spend my life researching because there's so many levels of this that actually do connect, but need researching at the same time, and so I started to put together from this synchronicity the fact that beyond presidents and prime ministers and all these politicians was actually a force, a network, a global network that was driving the direction of human society to ever greater dystopia. And interestingly, that thing that Betty Shine said, which was sometimes you will say things and wonder where they come from. And what went on from that was they will be our words, as she was quoting this, whatever it was. And the first 2.5 years, maybe, I would follow this synchronicity of information coming at me, and I would conclude what was happening as a result of it. Then it flipped, where I would know what was happening intuitively, and then the tangible names, dates, places, people, information would follow pretty quickly afterwards to confirm the initial intuitive, I think this is what's going on. And again, you know, I talked earlier about, you know, whatever we know, there's always more to know. So this is how I've worked all these years. So when I'd got to the point where I can see this global network of secret societies with this interlocking leadership that's directing that operates above the corporations and the governments and what have you, and is pursuing a global agenda towards dystopia, AI dystopia as we see now. But then it was like, okay, but what's behind that? And from the mid-90s, from about 1996, I started going to America to speak to no fucker. It was unbelievable. I spoke in someone's front room in New England to 5 people. I spoke just outside of Chicago to, 8 people.
And I've seen now the biggest podcaster in the world, Joe Rogan, wants to get you on. He's desperately I follow Joe, listen to his podcast, and the amount of times he's mentioned you and would love to get you on. I mean, I think you'd be brilliant. I don't know whether you get into America.
Yeah, well, the thing is about Joe Rogan though is he's basically not had me on, and has basically ridiculed me and dismissed me in so many ways.
See, I've not heard him say that. I mean, you
No,
know
he has.
more.
No, he has.
Has he? Yeah. Well, I think you used to be unbelievable because obviously meeting you, I think you'd more than hold your own, and he's a big conspiracy UFO kind of guy.
Yeah.
But some people say he's controlled opposition. I don't know.
Well, he gave Trump a softball interview. That's for
Yeah, well,
sure.
I don't think you can do anything other than let Trump talk, can you? If you're in Trump world,
yeah. Well,
I don't want to distract you there. You were talking there, Betty Shine.
You can call him out, yeah. But
Obviously, Betty Shine, where you were at. Is there a point here? Is a big awakening for you? You said when your head blew off when you go to Peru. What happened there?
Yeah,
it's one of the places I want to visit.
Yeah,
Machu Picchu and all. I'd love to see it.
Just after the Betty Shine. Well, actually, a few months after, I started to, in the synchronicity of my life, start thinking about Peru, where it came out of. And one of the things that's happened, Joey, since it started, is that a subject will come into my mind, and suddenly information from that subject is coming at me from all angles. This has gone all the way to present day. And you start to recognize it, that there's another stage emerging. So I'm walking past a travel agent, for instance, and I'm looking in this same period, and I'll see holidays to Peru in the window, kind of, as a center of the window display, and I would turn the television on, and it would be a documentary about Peru. It was all like Peru,
Paddington Bear and all that.
Yeah. So I actually got on a plane to Peru purely on intuition. I had no idea.
Yeah, but so you've bought a ticket, obviously.
I bought a ticket, but this is after a long period, a pretty long period of Peru everywhere. I remember watching them in the World Cup. It's about as much as I knew about Peru, right?
The red stripe. Right?
So anyway, again, the synchronicity. I get on a plane, and just before I left, I'd met a woman, again synchronistically, who said she had a friend in a place called Cuzco in Peru. Because I told her, I'm going to Peru. I don't know why, and she told me about that. So, and she said, I'll give you a phone number. So I arrive in Lima, and I get off the plane. It was an overnight plane, and I didn't know what to do or why I was there, but I'd just gone. It was like this drive. I got to go to Peru, and it's about I don't know, five-ish in the morning, something like that. It's bloody packed, this Lima airport. And I'm standing there with me cases thinking, well, what the frickin' hell now? And this figure came through the crowd, young bloke, obviously on a bit of commission. He said, where you go? And I looked up.
Chinese?
No, I can't do frickin' accents, mate. It was something like that. And I look at the board and I see Cuzco. And I'm thinking, Cuzco, that's where this woman lives that she told me about. So I said, well, Cuzco, I want to go to Cuzco, right? He said, you have ticket? I said, no. He said, you have hotel? I said, no. He said, I get you ticket and hotel. So I follow him through the crowd, and there's this long queue to the check-in to this flight to Peru. It's going about 6:20, so it was pretty soon. And I, being English, I went to the back of the queue, No, follow me. And I follow him down the front of the queue, and he puts my my ticket on the guy's desk, because obviously he knows the bloke, and he checks me in. And very soon after arriving in Peru, I'm walking across the tarmac to get on a plane to Cuzco. I get to Cuzco, he's got me a hotel, and a crap one actually, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, what now? And I think, well, that woman, I'll call that woman. So I contacted the woman, and she just happens to have a job as like a travel agent type. And she said, I'm just leaving to go to somewhere or other, but I can help you. What do you want to do? And I said, well, I gave her a few places. She said, well, what you need to do, you need to go to Machu Picchu and you need to go this place and that place. He said, but she said, what you really need if you kind of don't know anything about the country, you need a guide. He said, she said, I'll get you a Peruvian guide. So she gets on the phone to this guy, and I get this Peruvian guide. So I go round to his house the following morning. All this has happened so fast. And we're going to go around Peru. And I walk in I knock on his door, there's no answer. So the door was open, so I went in and walked through the house. Hello, hello. And he's on the floor asleep with a Peruvian kind of cap on. And he never said, oh, good morning, how are you? He said, do you have any dreams last night? What? Do you have any dreams last night? And I had this technicolor dream that one of my front 2 teeth had fallen out. I told him, and he said, well, that's usually symbolic of your father or grandfather dying.
Sigmund Freud's got something about that in a kind of dream analysis about teeth falling out.
Well, my father died in England at that time, right? I had no idea because, different now, I'm sure, but trying to get a communication out of Peru in those days was impossible. So anyway, we go around Peru and amazing things happen. And eventually, this was on his decision. He says, well, I want to take you to a place called Puno on Lake Titicaca, the highest navigable lake in the world. So he books us in this hotel, and this hotel is called the Siyustani Hotel, named after a so-called Inca site. I think it goes back far longer, about, 25 minutes drive away. And it's got pictures of this Siyustani all over the bloody hotel. And I'm standing there looking at one of the pictures, and it was saying, you come to me, basically. And I said to the guy, I want to go there. He said, oh, you give me a load of excuses why it wasn't possible. I said, look, I got to go. And this was the sequence. I would say to him where I wanted to go. He would say it wasn't possible. And we'd end up there every day. He never sussed that, actually there's a sequence here. So we get this like tourist type bus van thing with a driver, me and him, and we go off to Siyustani. And it's a beautiful place. With kind of Inca type stone
it's
constructs.
Incredible, isn't it? It's incredible. Some of the stuff out there is incredible.
And it was beautiful. But I walked around it for about an hour, and it was great, but it never matched the urge I had to be there. So I was quite disappointed. I thought, okay, it was lovely, but I was expecting more than this. And I got in the van, and we started to go back down the road. And I'm daydreaming out of the window, as I do all the time. And I saw this hill to the right. And as I was looking at it, basically I was hearing, come to me, come to me, come to me. And I'm thinking, this is freaking insane. That freaking hill's talking to you. That's ridiculous. But again, I'm going to go with it. So I said to the guy, can you stop the van? I'm going up that hill. I won't be long. Well, I was about an hour or so more. I walk up the hill, and there's all these stones there. And I walk into the center of them and stand there and looked across at Siyustani and the mountains in the distance. And suddenly it was like the newsagent's shop, but massively, massively more powerful. First of all, I felt the pull on my feet, like an electromagnetic pull. Then I felt a drill going in the top of my head, like, and then my arms go out like that, where there was no conscious decision to do it. And this voice, again, strong thought form went through my head, and it said, they'll be talking about this 100 years from now, it will be over when you feel the rain. And I'm looking at a clear Peruvian sky with a sun shining brightly. There's no sign of clouds or anything. And then this energy, it was coming in the top of my head and it was coming up through my feet and out the top of my head. It was like a two-way flow. And it got more and more powerful. So I'm kind of holding on in the end and I'm starting to shake. And what I was doing was going in and out of conscious awareness. So when you're driving a car and you can't remember the last 2 miles, your subconscious has been driving the car, thank God, because your daydreaming mind has been somewhere else consciously. And it was like that. And one of the times that I came back consciously, I saw over the distant mountains on the other side of Siyustani was like a light grey mist. And it got darker. And I thought, shit, it's raining. And this storm came out of the mountains ridiculously fast. And you know, people talk about a weather front.
Yeah.
Well, I've described this, what I experienced. And it, you know, if you did a movie on this and you did a B movie on this, it would have to be a B movie. People would say, oh, come on, that never happened. Well, it freaking did. It was like, the front was like, I've described it as like pulling curtains across the sky. There was this front of stair rod rain eventually. Stair rod rain, and it came towards me like a wall of frickin' rain.
Call it the devil's curtains, don't they, when it comes at you, if you see it at the sea and you're on the side.
Is that what they call it?
They call it the devil's curtain.
Well, it was coming at me, and by this time, I'm like it's like I'm plugged in the mains, right? And then the rain hit me, and it went shh, and I'm fine. The energy's gone when the rain hit me. And the rain hit me, and the rain was so powerful that I was soaked in seconds. And my legs were like Bambi now. And my arms were like that all that time. Didn't feel anything. Now my bloody shoulders and arms are agony. And I went back to the bus, and what had happened is just before I went out to Peru, I was in Glastonbury, right? The town of Glastonbury. I've been in like Glastonbury. Until it got a bit woke with some of the stuff. But it was very new age place and all that stuff.
Yeah,
and
the tour and all that.
Yeah. So it's a lovely place. But
it's got a lot of connections to the Druids and the
all
spirituality
that
of
the
United
stuff.
Kingdom. Yeah.
So I go into this shop, and I don't have an income at this point, so I'm watching the money very tightly. And I walk into this crystal shop, and I'm just looking. I'm in there alone, and there's the guy behind the counter, and he walks from out the counter, and he picks up this enormous quartz crystal. God knows how much it would have cost. And he said, "I think you need this." I said, "Sorry, mate, I can't afford that." He said, "No."
Is he a Leicester fan?
No, I don't know. I don't know who he was, but he was very, again, the synchronicity. He said, "You need this. You take this."
So let me just stop you there, because that's really interesting too. Because and again, I asked Gareth a question about you, and I'll get back to that in a bit. And he answered it, and I was like, okay, because obviously without knowing deep detail on you and being aware of you kind of formulate, oh, this is what must have happened. So I've been to Glastonbury, obviously, when I stopped playing, and I've had an experimentational. So that's why I'm like, perceptions and, the current states, they can all be opened up through, different channels. When I'd heard about you going to Peru, and obviously somewhere I desperately want to visit, want to take my kids, but obviously there's a part of me that's always had a yearning to go there, certainly with some of the documentaries I watch. I thought, well, you're born 50s, you're a teenager in the swinging 60s, you're a young adult in the 70s. Obviously, in the 90s, you talked about going to Peru and your head blowing off. So I'm thinking, well, he had a little dabble on the, for all the drugs that go on. Well, I'm just saying I have. Yeah. So I've experienced some of it. And then I've also listened to people now talk about, Conor McGregor's done something last week talking about Ibogaine, PTSD in soldiers, Ibogaine. Ayahuasca's a big thing out there, obviously DMT. And I thought, this is just me. When I'd heard the story, David's gone to Peru, I thought, he's got off into the jungle there on maybe to see Machu Picchu or whatever, the religious sites. And he's ended up getting up with the shaman and doing a bit of DMT or ayahuasca. No. And, all of a sudden the pathways become revelation.
I did that once later in the sequence in the rainforest of Brazil. But that was the only time I ever have. But I didn't at that time. And
because it sounds like you're having one of those experiences without actually taking the product.
Exactly. So the thing is, I went back to the taxi van, and that crystal was there in my bag that I got in Glastonbury in that synchronistic way, because what I was feeling was enormous freaking energy coming out of my hands and my feet. And I grabbed this crystal to try to take the energy out of my hands, because it was bordering on the unpleasant. And eventually it did, but my feet went on, and I couldn't sleep that night because of the energy coming out of my feet. And then I got on a plane home to England, and for 3 months it was like you'd lived a life in a certain bubble of sense of reality, and someone had come along and burst it. They hadn't give you any warning. They just burst it. And suddenly concepts and perceptions were pouring into my conscious mind. And I've described it as like pressing too many keys on the computer. The computer says, look, sorry, can't process this. Too much information. I'm freezing. And that was when I went on the Wogan show.